If you go to Canvas, so if you go to Canvas, under modules, okay, February 28, there's a file, user inputs and controls. And I'll first show you what it does, and then we'll replicate it, we'll recreate it. Document preview is currently being, no, I don't need a preview. Okay, so colors are important for dashboarding. Condensed insight, so just keeping the essential stuff in. We harped on that over the last 2 weeks as well. But you really can't have that final when people say this is splendid if you don't allow them to tinker with it. If you don't allow some sort of user input, some sort of interactivity. When people feel that they're in control of the dashboard, that they can, become a part of it, if you will. That's when they will really give you credit and say, well, you did a really good job. So here's an example, also based on a real world case study. I got a request about a month and a half ago from an analyst who is tracking European markets, dairy markets, of course. And she said, well, here's your table. Here's what I'm downloading from UDM. And there are, how many? 297 columns, no less, in the table. And you can see that this is all the different dairy products by each of the country in Eurostat. And it's all monthly. And she said, well, that's great, but that's not what I need. I said, well, what do you need? Well, she said, well, I need the year-to-date data. So year-to-date, you know what it stands for. If you have January, February, March, etc., and if January is 15, February is 17, and March is 12, this is the monthly data. Year-to-date data is just summing up. So this is 15. This is 15 plus 17, that's 32. This is 32 plus 12, that's 44, etc. So year-to-date data is a running total of a product or something produced in a year up until that point. That makes sense for flow variables. It doesn't make sense for stock variables. So if somebody asks you to calculate year-to-date data for corn stocks or year-to-date data for butter stocks, you should tell them that they don't know what they're doing, because we measure stocks at a particular point in time. We measure production, consumption, etc. over a period of time. The variables that we measure over a period of time can be summed up month by month to calculate a year-to-date. So she's looking at this, my analyst, and she's saying, this is too much. I don't need all of this data. It's not conveying insight. This is just data. I need information. I need insight. I need year-to-date. So the first thing I built for her was this sheet, where you can see now immediately how it's much less, overwhelming. Last 7 years of data, and I said, okay, in order to update this table, what you need to do, you need to again open the query, go to the query. You don't have to do it now. I'm just telling you what I told her. So you need to open the query every month, and then in that query there is this filtered rows. So the way you've seen a lot of these commands before. Here it is. I tested this just before class, so it should work. Yeah, it's coming. You can see that it's running in the back. Sometimes it's a bit slower than I would want it. So you've seen a lot of these commands already. Extract date, that just changes this column from daytime to date. And then, let me see. Yeah, and then filtered rows. What I did here, I just made it in such way that only the last 5 years of data is collected from the servers. You've seen that before. We've done unpivoting before, so I took all of these columns, I transformed them so that it's all stacked up. I extracted the year from the report period. I grouped rows. I pivoted it again, and this is actually annual. This wasn't even year to date. This was just annual data. And then after I did the annual data, she said, well, can you do year to date data? And then let me see. So what I did with the year to date data originally, I made a sheet where she would have to go in, and within the query, she would have to say, I want all the data through May. So she would have to open the query every month when she goes and prepares a new report for her senior management, and she would have to enter the new one. And that was still tedious. So I thought, well, let's build a better dashboard for her by doing a year-to-date data where you can make a control dashboard for your user, and your user will put some number in Excel sheet somewhere, and then let's say that we put, so take a look at this 260 here, drinking milk Austria. This is 260.53 right now. This is data through May. When I put 6 here instead of 5, and I click on the button, so I don't no longer, I'm asking the user to go and click refresh all and all of that. So it's much more customer friendly, if you will. So now the data is doing exactly that. It's going in the back. Well, it's going to happen once in every new laptop. So data is going online. This number is now going to be passed into the query, and the query, once it finally, this is my favorite parts when I'm on a sales call and the data is taking too long, and then I have to fill the gap. And we worked on this for very long time until we finally got the data in, but it should be just a moment. Here we are. So instead of 260 now, this is the data through June, 327 for Austria, etc. So now you can imagine the next month comes about. She doesn't need to do any of the backstage stuff. She can only control the dashboard through the front end, through the user input, through the buttons here. So this is the part that we're going to replicate today. I'm going to teach you how to use how to create a query that pulls in some information from the Excel sheet. So, and the idea is that information in the Excel sheet is something that your users will decide, not you, but your users will decide. And I'm going to teach you how to put a button, a control button here. They press that instead of having to go through the Excel buttons and then the data comes in. I want to show you an example of a dashboard that's finalized that uses this. I didn't put this one yet on Canvas. I need to change all the URLs. And it uses quite a few of URLs, so I didn't have a chance yet. So this is a premium calculator that I'm about to open. This is a premium calculator for a crop insurance program. And let's just enable content here. So color coordination first. Everything that is blue is something that the user controls. Everything that is green is something that the program returns. So they don't get So we've already studied drop-down menus. So you can see I have one drop-down menu for states. So you can choose to calculate these insurance premiums for different states. You can choose different time periods. All of these become queries. All of these become inputs to a query that pulls in the relevant data to this calculator. You get to decide on some numeric inputs, and then these are buttons here that when I press them, they transfer this data to the query, go online, grab all the new stuff in, put it in the Excel, and then we only see two tabs here. But remember what I told you about hiding sheets that are not relevant? There are a whole slew of sheets in the back that are doing all the hard work. They don't need to see all the plumbing. That's not of interest to them. They just want to see nice colors and the information they need. So this, for example, DRP yield is pulling data only a single cell of data based on these user inputs there. So I'll make this file available for you on Canvas. I'm not sure that we will go through it in great level of detail here, but none of it is password protected, so you can reverse engineer it, as much as you want and see how it all is plugged in together. This is some historical analysis, and all of this is prepared using the techniques exactly that I'm teaching you here. So what do you want to do first? Do you want to spend a bit of time completing homework 6? Who hasn't completed homework 6 yet? Who will still need some help? I see a few hands. Okay, even if you submitted yet, you can resubmit if you feel that you could benefit from some more time. Okay, do we have a class consensus? Okay, all right, but some of you are done already with that, so I want to honor your time. So this file is already online. And we'll get started with this soon. But let's spend a bit of time on homework 6. Okay, so what I do want to do with homework 6 is I just want to repeat the steps needed for part 2. Those steps that we recorded last time, but they ended up being deleted, not recorded. So now we are recording. I'm going to temporarily close this user input and controls file. And we are going to open the file that we worked with. Well, I'm not sure if we worked with. I'm just going to start it anew. Let's see. I have a knack for that, don't I? Okay. My name is Marin Bozic. Welcome to... All right, so to start from the beginning, one more time. So this was the file that we worked with last time. Thank you, Gabriel. Appreciate it. We will open the query. Okay, let's trust that this is recording now. In the query, in the advanced editor, we will go briefly through this code. The OData is the type of the data feed that we are using for our data in this class. And OData is very pliable. We don't have to pull all the data that exists at a particular URL. We can tell the OData to trim it to only certain columns, trim it to only certain date periods, return a limited number of rows, etc. And that is typically what we do with a click of a few buttons in the query editor. Now we are going to do that directly by ordering the data to come by collection date, and that's done by the selector called order by. Then we are going to limit the number of records that come in using the selector $top. The $top equal to 1 in combination with the order by collection date descending will ensure that we only get one record back, and that record will have the latest collection date. So once we've done that, the outcome of the first line is a single cell table. This is still a table. It has its column, It has the row numbers here. This is a table, but it has a single cell. Then we are going to extract data from that single cell. And you can see in the advanced editor how that is done. Well, we first extract the date. That is boring. We know how to do that. But then how do you go from table, and how do you extract the latest date? Well, in the advanced editor, what you would do is you would type in the name of the table, then in the square brackets, the name of the column, then in the curly brackets, 0, if you want the topmost cell. I believe you can also do it this way. You just double click on this number here and then do drill down. That is asking us if we want to insert a step. Yes. Okay, now we have a drill down. Now we have just a single number there. But we don't want to do that now. So we want to return this table. Oops, what did I do? I think I just messed it up. Let me close it and reopen. Okay, so this is how you extract a particular value of a particular cell. Then we have reformatted that cell to be in a particular format, where year is first and then dash, month, dash, date, day. We use that to get again filter the data. So now we are using the last selector filter, $ filter. And we are saying return only that data where the collection date is equal to the last day available, which is D. D was the last day available here in the previous row. And then return only the first 500 segments or first 500 draws, random draws, and do that for the product ID 80811. This is a little bit cryptic. For human consumption, we always name variable with strings. Machines don't like strings. They don't speak English. They speak binary, 1 and zeros, and so when we define variables for machine reading, we always give them a numbers. That is sometimes called a primary key. So in this case, this is all provided to you, so you didn't have to code this on your own. The part that I did ask you to do is to go from this shape to pivot to sort by draw ID, and then close and load. Does anyone need help doing that on your homework sheet? Or do you have this done? You have it done? Okay, close and load. Then the homework asks you to calculate probabilities. In empirical analysis, probabilities are often just defined as frequency of an occurrence of a particular event of interest within the sample available to you. So we don't know. Nobody knows what a true probability is that the dairy margin coverage margin will be below $7.50 in February. Nobody knows that. But we have certain model. That model returns some simulated outcomes, and we can count the outcomes. And then if, like, for example, 300 outcomes out of 500 are below 750, we can say that probability is 3/5 or 60%. That's empirical probability. It's really just a frequency. So that's what we're going to do here. We know that we have 500 observations for every month, and we can calculate how frequently or how many rows of those 500, how many are lower than 650 or 8 or 950. The way we do that here is through the use of a command countif. Countif has two arguments. The first argument is the range, that is the vector. It can even be a rectangle, it can be a range, but typically it's a vector or a column of numbers to which you will apply a certain criteria. The criteria is just a string. In this case, it's less than, and then a number in the cell A504. I'm using this concatenate to make the less than and the number be one string. So this is saying count how many rows in the B2 to B501 have values that are less than 6.5. And the answer is 0. When we apply the same command to margin equal to 8, the answer is 142. And all of the records, all of the observations, all of the simulations, I should say, have a value less than 9.5. We calculate probabilities then by just dividing each of these three numbers by 500 and then expressing it as a percent rather than a decimal point. And so those are your probabilities here. So that's all you need to do on this sheet. Does anyone need help with this sheet? Do you have the countifs done? Okay. So then the next step was to build a table with probabilities. This is really just an exercise in rotating data. We have as column headers something that were before listed in a rows. And each of these numbers are obtained by starting from the same anchor. In this case, that's sheet 2, A503, or we later named it probabilities. So sheet 2, A503, I can just put a $ in front of A and 503 so it's obvious. And then what I'm saying is take that starting point and then go this many rows down, go 4 rows down, and then go this many columns right. So go 1 column right. So you're going right as many columns as is the order of the month for which you're reporting. So you go right 1 column for January, 12 columns for December. And what you have in the end are just these probabilities. So people will look at those probabilities. They will first say, you did a good job. Like you summarized it in a way that it's not overwhelming for me. Imagine if you gave some producer who's trying to make a decision for his dairy and there are 300 cows waiting for him to milk them, and you give them this table, nice green, light green, and they will look at you like, oh, these academics, right? Like it's all over the place. What do I do with this? So it's your job as an analyst to condense the information in a way that immediately speaks to your target audience. And you can be really, really picky with the level of information that's needed. For example, maybe you want to exclude 650 because it's no longer relevant. Maybe you will say nobody will want to do 650. I'm only going to leave 8 and 950. Maybe you will say, this decimal point on percentage terms is not relevant. Nobody's going to make a different decision if probability is 68% versus 68.9%. So you can be very judicious. The goal is to be minimalistic. The goal is to be minimalistic and present the minimal amount of information needed for a fully informed decision. So you don't want to deceive them. You don't want to omit relevant information that would make them decide something completely differently. But you want to be very judicious in what goes on to what is presented in the final dashboard. So this is the table. Does anyone need help for your homework making this table? Okay, you're all good. I'm very, very pleased to hear that. Does anyone need help with the first part of the homework? Yes? Okay. Is there something that you would like me to walk through on the board, or should I walk around for a few minutes? Which one? Okay. All right. So let me do a little clinic, and then we'll continue here. I'll pause the recording, and if some. Okay. So here's what we're going to do now. I'm going to teach you how to insert buttons, and I'm going to teach you how to. Where is it? Do we have it open? I'm going to teach you how to do the user inputs. Okay, so first, let's just introduce a single button here next to this from scratch. You should have this file open. It's on Canvas. In the Excel, we will need what's called a developer tab on top. I don't have it currently in this on this laptop, so I'll go to File, and then under options here, options, and then I need to go to customize ribbon. Customize ribbon, and I need to select this developer. And then click OK. After you've done that, you should see this tab developer on top. Does everyone have developer on top? Yes? Okay. All right, so now let's go to developer, and we'll insert controls. And then this, I think the first one, the very first one is the button, form control. Okay, so I'm just gonna press that, and now I have to draw it. For now, just click OK. I just want to see the button. Okay, so this is your button. Everyone's on board? Okay, so let's first call it something nice. Let's put some edit text on that. Let's see if we can do this. No, that wouldn't be descriptive. We can't go dandelions in this class. I'll get fired. So let's just call it refresh. Now I'm super curious how many of you started typing grow down. Okay. All right. So now we'll just call it refresh. Right click on refresh. Now we'll do assign macro. And we'll just do a new macro. And this is what the macro needs to do. You just need 2 lines there. You just need these 2 lines. I'm just going to copy them over. I would advise you actually type it. You won't see this. So, okay, so you need to type active workbook dot refresh all. So active workbook is the workbook that is currently on your screen in which you're working. Refresh all means that all of the external data connections should be refreshed. This is equivalent to pressing the refresh all in the menus. And then this do events basically just says, okay, Excel, take your time, just refresh the data, and then let me know when you're done. So do events, and you're done. And just get out of there. All right, so let's just confirm. That works. So does everyone have the refresh button and the code in the VBA? Yes? You guys are so fast today. I'm gonna run out of material. I'm gonna have to start tap dancing around 1:10. Okay, you don't want to see that. Okay, so let's just press the new button, refresh. So you should see all of these all 3 queries should be pulling in new data. With the help of dramatic music. Once you plug that into a button, that would be a cool dashboard. They press like refresh, na-na-na, na-na-na-na. I'm too facetious today. Okay, we did it. You know, it loaded the data. It at least tried. Okay, so now let's see how we can use the user input. There are several steps there. So the first thing is we need to create this, something like this here. See this where it says year to date, connection only. This means that there exists something in the query space that we can reference from other queries. So see this year to date. You don't need to repeat this now. I just want to show you how we're going to use that. When we go to the query that we want to make responsive to the user input, in the filtered rows, okay. So the filtered rows, when you go to advanced editor, the filtered rows is saying less than year to date. So this Y2D is your name. This is what you call it. You could call it strawberry. You know, like, it doesn't matter. Like, as long as that exists as a separate query, it can be used here as a variable to filter rows. So that's why we need to build, we'll close this, and that's why we need to build year to date or something similar to that. So let's put another number. Let's say in B11, we'll put another number. Let's call it 8. Okay. Now, in the get and transform, you should find something that says from table or range in the get and transform. Make sure that you're in a get and transform data tab. Yeah, some of the old versions of Excel that have those other cells that are not get and transform. Make sure it says get and transform where you find this. From table range. Okay, from table range. Data in your table is in B11. My table has headers. Click OK. No, I messed up. Discard. Okay, 8. Again, position yourself over 8. Data from table. My data doesn't have headers. Okay. Now I'm just going to call that year to date 2. And from this table, I need to extract the value. So drill down, and that's all you need. Home, close and load. I'll do it one more time. Just want to make sure that this works. Let me just finish the process and I'll do it one more time. So here we are. Now what Excel did, it created a new sheet, but we don't need a new sheet. So we can delete the new sheet. So now you have year to date as connection only. Year to date 2 as connection only. In the process, we kind of made this table a little bit, this dashboard, to be a little ugly because now we inserted a table here that has these colors and stuff, and we don't really need that. How did I avoid it last time? Well, I made this a named range. I put a number there and then I gave the name to that range. So let's do it one more time. This time we will not create a table. Let's put a number 9 here. And then instead of let's put number 9 in B16. And then instead of B16, make sure that I'm recording. And no, yes, okay, I'm recording. So instead of B16, here, type in year to date 3. YTD 3. Okay. I'm going to go now through all the process of creating a query again. So pay attention now. So this is my year to date 3. This number 9 is in a named range with a name year to date 3. I'm going to data. And then here from table range. The query editor will not have to create a table because it's pulling the data from the named range. Which is what we want. Okay. Again, right click on the 9, drill down. And it's already has a name year to date 3. The range itself was named that way. And then close and load. And then, of course, we'll delete sheet 2. We don't need the sheet. We just need this to be in the memory. Let's clean this up a little bit. We'll remove year to date 2 because we won't use it. So delete. Let's remove this table as well. Okay. All right. Does everyone have something very similar and functional to what I have? Love to make a loop now if anybody needs a bit of assistance. If not, let's see how we can now create a query that will be responsive to this number 9. Currently, we have only a query that uses this button, refresh data, and it's only using this Y to date. Now let's create a query that will have this as a parameter. Let's clean up a little bit more. Let's right click on this old button and maybe just cut it so that we don't have it. And maybe move your button to prime time here. Okay, so let's start. I'll need to do this on 2 laptops. Just a second, guys. Need to grab the file from Canvas. Okay, so we'll start by going to data, and then you'll need to do the get data from online sources, from other sources, from all data feed, just so you can get back to the navigator. You know the drill here. Okay, and click OK. You'll get to the navigator with all the tables available for you. And we will work now with the Eurostat cow's milk collection and products obtained, dairy products, and click on Edit there. Okay, the first thing we will do is we'll transform the report period to the date only, just cleaning up a little bit. And then after that, we'll save only the data after or equal to 2012, January 1st. We only want some recent data. So this is old news for you guys. After or equal to 1/1/2012. Okay. All right, is everyone with me? Yes? Eric, you need help? coming. Oh, interesting. Because the same, he also thought about UMN direct here. So it's UDM. Right?
Oh, okay.
So UDM stands for Understanding Data in Markets. Let me show you my new website. This is going to be our portal. It's going to be, oh, this is old. I have to reload it. So this is going to be the new website. It will be out next week. So you'll be able to go in, sign in, or not. Sign in. And then we'll have interactive dashboards, just like you're learning to make in Excel. We'll have the dashboards interactive in online. So remember, I told you that you should sometimes normalize to 30 days. You can do that here with just a click. You can transform it to month on month, etc. You can see all the data, monthly change, month on month, year on year, etc. Change the area here, units between metric and imperial, etc. So the idea is now to add menus here and all the data that we collect to make it presentable in some way here. And then there's some it looks simple, but there's so much work. This what you are looking at here has already cost me over $100,000. It's just like it's unbelievable. Okay. Anyway, I digress. All right, so we now selected data from 2012 onwards. We want to unpivot it so we can manipulate the data. So to unpivot, we just put Control A to select everything. And then again, you hold Control and you click on the title of report period. So to have everything selected except report period. Okay, everything except report period should be selected. Transform, unpivot, here, unpivot. So what happened now is that you have something that is organized differently. It's organized so that it's all stacked up. And the reason we do that, because for every single record, we need to determine separately what the year is and what the month is, because we'll be doing year-to-date calculations. So we'll go to report period and we'll right-click, duplicate column. I'm coming. So this is where I want you to be, to have 4 columns, report period, copy. Yes, sir. So yeah. Okay, so now I have a duplicate column there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to extract the months. I'm going to name this column months. Right click, transform, months. Like this. Okay. All right, so now comes the critical time where we are going to enter the parameter that we have previously defined. In order to do that, we are first going to fake it. We are first going to go to months, and they then say something like choose. Let me just load all of them. Maybe just do something like deselecting 12. So that's not what we want, but what that is going to do, this is going to create a template that we can use in the advanced editor for quickly inserting our parameters. So you see the last row in the advanced parameter in the advanced editor now says take the previous table and extract them with the name extracted month. This is the name of the table, right? Take the previous table and then from that table keep only those rows for which the column month is different than 12. Now instead of different than 12, we are just going to put in less than or equal to Y2D3. As simple as that. So the key is to get to a point where Power Query writes all the code for you, and you just need to pinch it a little bit and it's ready. Let's give it some time. Okay, now we no longer need the month column. That's an interesting feature of Power Query. You can first use the column and then you can remove it. We talked about this before. Then we will, from report period, we will extract the year because now all of this data is really will need to be aggregated. It will need to be grouped. So we need to extract from this transform year. And I'm going to call that year, just so it's clear what we're doing. Yes, I did. But after you insert the parameter. Okay? So now what I need to do is I need to group the data. So you can position yourself either over attribute or here, doesn't really matter. Group by. Go to advanced. We will group the data by here, but that's not enough. We also need to group the data by attribute. An attribute is basically just a set of all permutations of the series of interest and the area to which it applies. Gabriel, I'm coming in a moment. Let me just explain this and then I'll visit. Okay, so group by year and attribute. Do I need to stop here and visit with you? Is there a danger of losing you? Is it a Y key? No. Oh, yeah, sometimes when you pull the data, sometimes when you pull the data from the sheet, it's going to ask you about the privacy levels because it wants to make sure that there are no confidential data from the sheet being sent to the server. And whenever you're using something, whenever you're using a user input, that input is being transmitted to the server. So, so the Excel is concerned for your privacy. That's why it's giving you those messages. Okay, so we'll do control A. Anybody else? You good? Okay. All right, so we will group by year and also by attribute, which means that if we selected Y to be, if our year to be was 6, each group is going to have 6 members, right? For January, February, March, April, May, and June. Operation is going to be the sum, because we are looking at the sum of everything that happened during those months, sum of things that are in the value column, and we should call this just Y2D. And then you can click OK. Okay, so now we have this data. The last thing we need to do before loading is to pivot the data again. So position yourself over attribute. Now what we want to do is we want to take all of these strings that used to be column headings, we're going to make them column headings again. We're going to transpose them here. So position yourself over attribute, click transform, click pivot. Values are in the Y to D column, and we don't want to aggregate. Click OK. And we are ready to load. Close and load. Here we are. Okay, so now we still have an awkward situation that our control is on one sheet and our data is on another sheet. So what we can do, let's see if this will work. If I do cut of this, put it here. Yeah, it did work. It named range just got transferred here. I'm going to do the same with cut this, paste. I can do everything except right click. Okay. All right, so what I did right now is I moved our named range of interest, Y to D3, and our new refresh button, I moved it into the query that we created, not something that existed before. So let's test it out. Let's put it to action. Instead of 9, why don't we put 3? And click refresh. Takes a little bit because there are 20 people doing this at the same time. And we have it. I have 196.16. Are you seeing the same for Austria? You don't? You do? Okay. So let me put something. Because you chose everything yeah. It was just, I think it was pointed to the old button, so the old button and stuff. You guys all good here? Come in. If you start without okay. All right, so this is basically it. This is basically it. Now we know how to use user input to pull in data. So let's read the homework 7 now, and you can start on homework 7. And I'll assist. I'll do the quiz for the last 35 minutes. I'm going to start from the bottom of homework 7. She, your team leader, suggests that you find a way to plot this data in a way that makes it easy to see regional growth trends, but she did not offer any further details. Every single class, or most of the classes that you've taken at the university, in this class up until this point, and if you took my futures and options and classes, we give you numbers, we define the problem for you, and then we ask you to solve it. A lot of what will determine whether you get promoted or get stuck in your private career once you're out of here will rely on your ability to define the problem rather than just solve the problem. Defining the problem is probably at least 60% of solving it. Because if you don't know where to look, if you define the problem in a wrong way, you'll definitely not get a correct solution. So I'm going to challenge you here. I find that so I get to work with really smart people. My graduate students are fantastic. They take masters and PhD later. But what I find that they often struggle when they make this transition from undergraduate studies to a graduate school is that we throw this ambiguity at them. Now it's like, go figure out what happened. And instead of like, what is X equal to? So I want to give you some discomfort with this homework 7. I want to put you on the spot and say, now it's up to you to define what's the appropriate way to show this data. I'm not going to tell you, have a discharge that looks this way. There are 20 of you here, I expect 20 different choices. A little bit more grading time for me, but I really want you to think through this and to understand that when you, in a few months, or maybe a year and a half, whenever you graduate, when you take your first job, after they train you, they will expect you to live in the ambiguity, in a world full of ambiguity, to define the problem. They will not tell you how to solve it. So let's start the process now and learn to live with ambiguity. And what is the ambiguity here? What does this professor want me to do? What gives me points, right? And like, how is she going to grade it? Like, is it unfair? Well, your job is to find the right graphic to give insight to this data, to give life to this data. Okay, now that we've seen what the real mission is here, let's go back and let's see what the problem at hand is. To some extent. You're an analyst in charge of presenting the data on U.S. dairy markets. Your team leader told you she needs to understand how the current year milk and dairy products production, so milk production is one thing, dairy products production is another thing. Milk is raw commodity, dairy products of cheese, yogurt, butter, etc. How the current year milk and dairy products production compares with prior years. In particular, she would like you to build a table that has 10 top 10 producing states, that's for milk production. For dairy products, you can just use national data. Sorry that I didn't make that clear. Ambiguity already. So, and often you will find this, that your boss will give you a task that is maybe even, entirely inconsistent, and it's up to you to read her task and system. You should really thank me for being spoken to. All right. So this is what I want you to do. For milk production, I want you to build a table that has top 10 milk producing states in rows and last 10 years in columns. So this will be something like this: California, Wisconsin, Idaho, New York, etc. Top 10. And you will store them by their most recent production. And then what we will have on the columns are last 10 years. So 2009, 2010, 2011, etc., up through 2018. What your team leader would like to have is that each data cell in this table will contain year-to-date milk production. So this cell here will be year-to-date California in 2009. And she would like to have a control field where she will enter the number 1 to 12, so there'll be some control dashboard here, and a button, refresh. I need a whiteboard example. Okay, so this is a button that she can press. This is a cell where she can enter a number between 1 and 12 for months. When she enters a number, this table will update, and for these 10 years, for these 10 states, you will present year-to-date milk production data. So the table you will need for that, it's not in the homework listed, but when you go to recent sources, you should be able to see recent sources now because you're logged in once already. You will need to use milk production monthly. So UDM report milk production monthly. If you're really curious, you can take a look at what this panel table is, but it's not relevant for this particular homework. Okay, so this is for the first part. So she needs to have a ability to choose month, click refresh, and this table should pop up. And then, if you have some extra time, if you're really curious, you can also do the drop-down menu. So the drop-down menu, and this will be the daily products drop-down menu, so cheese, butter, etc. And as you choose the drop-down menu, there should be another table, a year-to-date for 2009 to 18. Just for that part, butter, and then there'll be just a few regions. They organize the data by regions, not by states. Okay, so this is going to be something like, so for example, for butter, I think they give you Wisconsin, California, and Atlantic region, something like that. So this is going to be, let's say, extra credit, but you can get the full credit for your homework for just the milk production, date, refresh, and year-to-date table. Now, reading back the second part of the homework, she also suggests that you find a way to plot this data, milk production data. She also suggests you find a way to plot this data in a way that makes it easy to see regional growth trends. She didn't offer any further details. Okay, so this is due next Wednesday at midnight. So we have a class on Tuesday that we can spend on walking through this, and I can, we can make it more clinic-like, so I can help you with your ideas. But now this is the second homework. We'll do one more. But this is the second. You notice that it's a little bit less structured. Now you are now taking the control seat. You are now choosing how this dashboard should look like, how are you going to trim the query, etc., and populate this. And then if you're really good, you can also go for this daily product dashboard, which is a little bit more difficult to do. So you can start, and I'll just walk around, and I'll help you. Just a second. Let me just do one more thing. So just one more hint before you start. For the second, the extra credit part, the dairy products part, use the table, UDM report, dairy products monthly panel latest. Let me show you how that one looks like. Okay, so it has these product names in the name column. It has the areas in the area column, and then the values in there. So this is sort of like unpivoted column already for you. So you can really, let yourself go. And for example, you can modify the name column so that you remove the comma production all the time to make it prettier, and all kinds of bells and whistles. All right, I'm going to visit now. I'm going to stop recording for the day. I'm going to immediately start transferring this to the format that I can upload on YouTube.